What's up, y'all? It's your boy, the one and only A Switch, aka let me suck on them kneecaps, aka I keep spilling shit on myself, aka let me put a sour patch kid on your nipple. Let me suck. Oh, that's wild. That's the wildest. AKA the Nigga Lil Master, bringing you yet another episode of Switch Sites, episode 168. I know I took a little break, another break. Also, I was kind of experimenting that I might potentially mess with doing maybe potentially switching this to a monthly type podcast, but we'll see. I don't know. We'll play it by ear. But yeah, I don't know. I was kind of digging just the maybe kicking this down to monthly, but we'll see. Either way, we shall see. Well, so much has happened since we last talked, but I don't recall everything that did. I was, of course, diligently taking notes and whatnot for stuff to talk about in this episode, but we got some good stuff to discuss on this episode of Switch Sites. What was I gonna do? I just forgot. Well, we were going to talk about the Xbox Direct, my top 10 games of 2022. So just to give you a little taste of what to expect with this show. So you know what? Let's stop the dilly-dallying and get right into it, because we got a lot of catching up to do. So first topic of discussion. Xbox Developer Direct. I caught a little bit of it. And it was pretty decent. At least let's go over all of what was announced. We got Elder Scrolls Online. Basically them announcing their whole effort. I think there's a substantial new update. I know there's a lot of miscellaneous updates to Elder Scrolls Online, like damn near 15, 16 pieces of content on its own. But, you got that. I think they said also all of it will be free to play. At least before having to pay for this new content, I want to say. So you got that. Yeah, and I think they're going to have a more in-depth announcement or kind of a showcase for that specifically. New Forza Motorsport was announced. This was revealed back in 2020. Apparently it's going to drop in spring 2023. That wasn't announced in the trailers, but at least that is the understanding that sometime around spring of this year is when that will drop. Minecraft Legends. I thought they made a Minecraft Legends, but I think I got the terminology. Minecraft Dungeons, I think. That's what I'm thinking of. But yeah, Minecraft Legends, it seems similar, but I'm guessing it's different. PvP multiplayer, action strategy type of vibe. So yeah, sure. Not really my cup of tea, but they also showed Arcane's Redfall, which was announced I think last year, and they actually dropped the release date, which is May of this year, May 2023. So that was fairly surprising. Of course, another big highlight is Tango Gameworks, of course, the people that made The Evil Within, and Ghostwire Tokyo, coming out of nowhere with a totally just straight up random, unexpected game called Hi-Fi Rush. I want to do it. Hi-Fi Rush. I like it. Hi-Fi Rush, which is basically, I haven't not played it, at least what was shown, kind of like an action adventure game, but with the main, I guess, consistent theme being like rhythm and beat. So unfortunately, white people, I'm sorry. It's gonna be but seriously, it's basically based on beats, and basically the game incentivizes you to stay on rhythm in terms of, I guess, from what it looks like, doing certain attacks, as well as the environment in the world reacts to the beat and or the music essentially that's going on, which is pretty dope. It seems like another valid attempt compared to I think the at least last notable game that tried that was Def Jam Icon, where basically, you know, what was cool about that, almost any song you could play would react to the music, so you could do custom soundtracks and stuff like that. So I'm curious if it's something similar or close to that, which would be pretty dope. I would dig it very much. So yeah, and also that got a shadow drop. The full game, mind you, was released yesterday, so free on Game Pass. Well, you know, if you have Game Pass, so that is a pretty damn dope shadow drop. I'm definitely interested to play it, but I've been playing a lot of other stuff, but I'll eventually get to playing that. But outside of that was pretty much all that was the Xbox Developer Direct. Overall, hey, Xbox got some games, so obviously that's the biggest criticism I think a lot of people have with Xbox. So it seems like, hey, this year might be the year that they definitely at least start making that initiative to turn things around. So moving on. PS5 Revision is apparently coming this year, according to the infamous Tom Henderson. Basically, I think this was also brought up a couple times previously, but basically, a new PlayStation 5 with a detachable disc drive is in the works. So basically, you have the option to buy the PS5, this new PS5 without a disc drive, and you know, if you change your mind down the road, you can buy one, which is was a pretty dope. I say way to do it. Even though I don't know, I'm particular to knowing I would always have discs, but it is cool at least to give you, the consumer, an option to, you know, maybe you don't see yourself getting discs or playing with discs, or to save money and then, you know, buy that down the road due to, you know, how generally fairly expensive consoles are. But that's cool. Other than that, no substantial like upgrades. No, like, this is not going to be the PS5 Pro or like a mid-gen upgrade or anything like that. It just seems to be just solely a console refresh, where, you know, pretty much normally in pretty much the history of consoles, they've always made new reiterations of existing console with cheaper, more efficient parts to overall just have make production cheaper to do. So seems to be par on course in that respect. One thing I think a lot of people asked was that if you have a PS5 digital version, the first generation, I guess that's technically would be applicable. If you have a first generation PS5 digital version, if you could purchase this disc drive, and it seems like that's not the case, but who knows, maybe like a firmware update might make that more viable. So I mean, it does have a USB, not USB-C, or yeah, I think USB-C in front of the console that should be able to support a disk drive technically, but maybe it might be something after, it's been out in the wild a bit and maybe people are yearning for it, but who knows. But interesting nonetheless. Just specifically just having a detachable disk drive. I'm just curious how it would work. Like, would it be just like a thing you slot in and slot out and maybe have something in its place if you don't have a disk drive, which I think would be cool. I think will be personally be very aesthetically pleasing, but I digress. So there, you got that. And keeping that Sony train going. Chee. We also got Project Leonardo, which was announced at CES that happened I think earlier this month, where basically this is Sony's answer to the Xbox adaptive controller. So basically it's a adaptive controller of itself, where it's meant to be accessible to people with disabilities and things of that nature, which seems pretty cool. It seems pretty cool. It looks like it has pretty much all the fixings to fully customize it how you see fit. And hey, I always respect that. The more people that can play video games, the better, I say, personally. You love to see it. You love to see it. Also, we got some interesting news in terms of PlayStation 5 sales as a whole for the end of year results. So the PlayStation 5 sold 30 million units as of December 2022, which, damn, that's gotta give it up. Gotta give it up for Sony. That's a lot. That's a lot of PS5s. That's a lot of PS5s to sell. Let me tell you. That's a damn country. That's a damn country of PS5s. Which is not really a surprise. PS5 has always been generally ahead of the console race in terms of what is it called when you with the tickets scalping wise. PS5 has always been in the top of the list amongst the other commonly scalped stuff. Of course, the shortage of PS5s has always been the consistent talk of the town for the longest, until I think somewhat recently that PS5s are actually more accessible, at least from the PS5 direct store. So at least it definitely, it looks like all of that went in PS5's favor regardless. I mean, you normally don't hear, what's up with the Xbox stock situation. Well, I guess it was more, at least initially, like when they released back in 2020, but still, it was just good job on Sony though. I mean, I'm not too surprised, but at least obviously amidst the chip shortage and supply chain delays and the pandemic, that's still pretty commendable, Next, did I get rid of my window? I didn't want to do it. Did not want to do that. Promise I didn't want to do that. Come on. Next topic. Bayonetta 3 is getting, or has gotten by now, a substantial patch for a lot of things. At least, I feel a sneeze coming on. I really feel it. Come on. Okay, maybe not. Maybe not. Oh, I feel it. It's gonna come at some point. In terms of this substantial update, a lot has been apparently fixed. I've yet to go back to it after I beat it. A ton of Viola fixes, which that was a big issue for me. I think they fixed her parry and her blocking. I think the controls potentially for it, but at least the Viola parry time, it was very annoying and like not even worthwhile. Like, at least from what I recall, when you tried to parry, it was very not worth it. You got like a millisecond of time, especially compared to Bayonetta in the same game. And I think a lot of her controls and just a lot of her stuff was not very fun. So hopefully a lot of that was fixed. A few weapons were tweaked to allow Wink slave access. I think that might be the slave kaiju system, I want to say. 7 Niflheim secret missions made easier. I think like a lot of the times are more generous now, which I ended up not bothering to do them because I was like, yeah, I just didn't feel like I was more so on track to just beat the game and see what the story was like. The Golem Fragment quest, collect pieces, has not only been made easier, but you can now fast forward through the cutscene. Lots of bug fixes. So that's good. I think they also made a thing where it was like a secret. The conditions to do it are way more lenient now, where basically I think the secret was to basically play an upcoming Bayonetta related game that was announced, or it was like kind of like a demo in a way. So that's good for Bayonetta 3. I'm not sure if all these would fix the many issues I have with the game, but nonetheless, it's pretty good. And of course, the performance issues when it comes to the Nintendo Switch, but it's good to see at least, Platinum still making changes and efforts to make the changes. So, also, Deathverse is gonna be shut down. Deathverse, for those that don't know, Deathverse Let It Die, which is, it's hard to say. I guess it's kind of a sequel to Let It Die, in terms of the name and the vibe and design, but it feels pretty different compared to Let It Die. Consider Let It Die as like a single player, like asymmetrical, or what's the word, asynchronous multiplayer game. While this one is a like kind of semi battle royale melee game, I guess. I remember at least playing it. It was not that fun, but at least in terms of the statement to all our players, thank you so much for the constant support of Deathverse Let It Die. Incredibly grateful to everyone who enjoys and enriches the game in this community. There is no doubt that we experience some challenges as long as the game, particularly with regards to in-game matchmaking and lag. Deeply apologize for these issues that may be cause inconvenience to our players. While we try various solutions to some degree of success, we have not been able to resolve the underlying problems. As a result, the development and operations teams have made the decision to temporarily suspend the game's services while we redevelop Deathverse Let It Die. This was a difficult decision for us to make. However, we believe that re-releasing the game with significant improvements will allow it to be enjoyed by a wider audience as well as our current players. Considering how much time goes into developing a game and that there's a finite number of games one can possibly make in a lifetime, it's impossible to say at this stage whether this is the right choice, but we love this game and are proud to have developed it together as a team. Therefore, we believe this is the best possible decision at this time. We will be doing our utmost to prepare for the re-release so that our current community can enjoy the game alongside many more new players in the future. Greatly appreciate your understanding and support. So yeah, at least for me, I played like a couple here and there. I think I played the beta, and then when it technically, I guess, came out, if you will, and it just wasn't hitting for me. It just really wasn't. I don't know. It's just it's hard to describe, but like when you just have a feel for a game and it just doesn't feel good. And don't get me wrong, I love me some janky games. I've enjoyed my fair share of janky games, but I don't know. It's something maybe about the multiplayer element of it where, I felt like when I got killed, it was fairly cheap. And that it didn't feel necessarily fair, if that makes sense, which, so hopefully at least them, taking the time, to rework this game will hopefully, work in their favor and, maybe result in a much better game than at least what we got. So I'm all for it. It's crazy though that they literally cut it off. But I mean, it's understandable considering the issues, and presumably not as many people may be playing it after, experiencing it and whatnot. Also, like Brief mentioned, Marvel's Avengers is basically on its way out too. I think it's ending fairly quicker. Let me check. Yeah, Marvel's Avengers ending development. Following the update on 2H on March 31st, 2023, will no longer add new content or features to Marvel's Avengers. All official support for the game will end September 30th, 2023. So considering that it is online, I'm curious if it will still be accessible to play online. Okay, yeah, they say you'll still be able to play it even in multiplayer. There just won't be any further updates or even technical support for it after September 30th. So hopefully they get rid of all the pay to play or the microtransactions, but we'll see. So yeah, man, all of them getting a cut. So with that being said, that'll do it for the topics news for this week. Get into what I've been playing. Let's do it. Top 10 games 2022. Number 10. Pokemon Arceus Legends. I was very surprised by this game when I played it last year. It was pretty, what's the word? It was like a breath of fresh air, I'd say, in terms of the game. In regards to, obviously the typical Pokemon formula and all that. And at least playing this definitely gave me a lot more hope in terms of Pokemon as a whole, even though I didn't play Sword and Shield. Not Sword and Shield. What's the one that came out? Violet and Scarlet, when that came out later this year, because of the bugs. But I'll probably play it at some point. But this definitely felt the closest to what I wanted a traditional Pokemon game to be, in regards to, actually seeing the Pokemon out in the wild and then catching them, and then of course all the other miscellaneous stuff in terms of, certain Pokemon only, being able to be met during certain conditions and stuff like that. So yeah, I thoroughly enjoy Pokemon Legends Arceus, so that's why I put it at number 10. Number 9, Sifu. What do I say about Sifu? Well, of course it's a beat 'em up, so at least that then and there always puts it in my good graces. But it's a very unique type of fighting game, a fighting game of which it's much more. How would I say it? Environmental awareness. Yeah, I think that's the best way to describe it. It's a beat 'em up with a lot more environmental awareness in terms of much more of an emphasis of fighting multiple people within your vicinity as well, and also of course being very punishing in a lot of ways. And I like the dynamic in the game where, you know, every time you die, you age, you age much more until you die of old age, technically, which was a pretty cool concept, and of course definitely flows pretty well in terms of the story of the game as well. But just overall combat, the feel of you know, the hitting people, doing the multiple punches in the face, all of it. I really enjoyed the game, and that is why I put it at number 9. Number 8, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Shredder's Revenge. This game, what do I say about this game? Of course, I was very much hyped for it as a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles fan growing up as a kid. I think it definitely delivered in terms of bringing Ninja Turtles back to the current generation of games as a beat 'em up, mind you. Having a lot of cool sensibilities, adding like very subtle mechanics, like of course like juggle mechanics, which hey, any game add juggle mechanics, I'm interested in right then and there. What else did they add that was very substantial? Probably, of course, all the love for all of the lore of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. This is definitely just a love letter in a lot of ways. A lot of characters I even as a fan myself, I've never seen, but I know they probably exist to some capacity, whether it be the animated series or shoot, even the movies in a few ways. But yeah, overall, I think it did a great job. You could play 6-player co-op, which is crazy for a beat 'em up, mind you, as well. But I think they did everything they needed to do for this game, while also balancing that line between not drastically changing what old fans of Ninja Turtles are familiar with, but also pushing it a little bit in a direction to kind of like reinvent, like, a beat 'em ups, which I'm always gonna respect TMNT for. So that is why TMNT Shredder's Revenge is at number 8. Pardon me, lost cow. but I digress. Number 7, Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak. Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak, DLC, mind you, is a pretty dope DLC package to Monster Hunter Rise, and I really enjoyed the new monsters. Of course, a lot of monsters that we haven't seen in a bit. Shouts out to Gore Magala. Who else? What was a good monster? Oh man, I think Barryoth. He was cool, but I mean, he's been fairly consistent. Yeah, Gore Magala just sticks out to me personally. Yeah, that's my dog. That's my dog. But of course, they added like a lot of new content in terms of the I forgot the move system, but basically you get to do change the properties of your move set by just swapping between I guess stances in technically, but it gives you a lot of flexibility in terms of like your move set and like what complements what, and as well as like your special moves and things like that, which I think also helped keep the game engaging as well. So and of course, hey, who gonna defy more Monster Hunter? I know I'm not. Oh yeah, I forgot I did replay on PC to get up to the Sunbreak content, which was actually pretty fun, especially playing the game on a higher fidelity, 120 plus FPS, and that smooth 4K resolution. You gotta love it. But overall, I thoroughly enjoyed my experience with Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak, so that is why it's at Number 7. Number 6. Kaito Files DLC. Lost Judgment was saving the best for last when they released the Kaito Files DLC for Lost Judgment, which basically lets you play as Yagami's right hand man Kaito, and he, off the rip he does feel a little bit like Kiryu, but he feels like, yeah, he kind of feels like Kiryu in beast mode, his beast mode stance. If you played the Zero and the Kiwami, he feels somewhat similar to that, but he does have at least a little bit more identity as his own, which I appreciate. And of course, he's got the style switching that was introduced in Lost Judgment with Yagami. He has his own as well, which was pretty fun to play. You know, doing them juggles, swapping stances, keep on juggling, swap stances, juggle again. I love it. It was great. It was fantastic. So that is why Kaito Files DLC. Wait, did I say number 7? I think I said number 6. Just gotta be sure. Number 6. Number 5. Modern Warfare 2. Of course, hey. I ain't got no shame. I'm a sucker for some Call of Duty. I'm a sucker for some COD. That makes it sound so much. I'm a sucker for some COD. Anyway, yeah. Modern Warfare 2, I mean, pretty much more or less more Modern Warfare. For at least at the initial release, multiplayer had a lot of issues, but at least over time, at least up until now, they've definitely made a great effort to resolve a lot of at least the biggest glaring issues. I know at least at release. Probably the biggest one was the double XP counters, which you couldn't see the timing or how much time you had left when you activated them. So you're like, I don't know if I'm still got more, so I'm gonna just use some more now and go over and maybe waste some because you thought maybe you were done, but maybe you had more time. But at least they fixed that now that you can actually see the time of your bonus DLC, bonus XP and weapon XP, etc. tokens. So that was probably the biggest glaring issue. Of course, the for me personally, not being able to save your loadouts in terms of your gunsmith customizations. So thankfully that's been fixed. You can actually save your up to 5 for each weapon type gunsmith customization. So that was the biggest other issue for me. And at least the biggest gripe I had was the perk system in terms of the delayed time perk system. But at least they kind of made it a little bit better, but I'm hoping they'll probably eventually change it. I know I'm not the only one in terms of not liking the timed time/incentive performance incentive based perk system. So I'm hoping that changes, and it's crazy how I'm talking just negative in terms of this being at number 5, but it's not as bad as I'm making it out to be. But I mean, it's like outside of that, the Call of Duty is there, and I know it'll only get better in time. But at least speaking on the single player campaign, I thought it was pretty damn good for the expectations you have going into a Call of Duty single player campaign. So you got that. So that is why I put Modern Warfare 2 at number 5. Number 4, Neon White. Love me some Neon White. Love me some Neon White. At least when this was announced, I think last year, I want to say, I was all in. I just love the vibe, the whole vibe and presentation of the game. totally had me captivated. So that's why I definitely was a huge fan of Neon White off the bat. And then after playing it, I was like, oh, this is pretty dope. This is pretty dope. So at least I guess what the game is not, I don't generally see the game getting a good rep for, is that it's pretty much a speed running game, like a one of the most speed runningness games I've seen. Basically a game that teaches you like speed running essentially, which is something I didn't really like notice after like literally playing the whole game. But I mean, essentially it is that, you know, basically trying to get the next best score, trying to beat your score, trying to get that gold medal. At least for me, that was my personal goal, at least to get gold on all the levels. Which yeah, this game definitely does it. Of course, how can I forget about the awesome, the dopest soundtrack I've heard this year. I'd say this is by far the best soundtrack this year, in my opinion. Shouts out to Machine Girl. They did the soundtrack. Man, they put their foot in it. They put everything in it. I bump that soundtrack relentlessly. Had it on loop ever since I played it. So, and just the whole vibe experience, the character building. You got Steve Bloom as the main character, voice acting. I guess some people had issues with the voice acting, but I liked it. So yeah, overall, very fun experience. I really loved it. It was like, yeah, if you mix Mario with Adult Swim and a shooter, it would be Neon White. It feels like, which all those things are up my alley. So, hence why I'm a huge fan of Neon White. It just feels good. I've played it multiple times. That's another thing for me. I've literally, when you beat the game, you get like what I guess essentially is a speed running mode where you just play the levels and you don't do the dialogue, or stop and go and talk with people and stuff like that. So, and that was very fun. Beat it in like 2 hours, which was a pretty fun experience. So yeah, man, shouts out to Neon White, man. Again, one of probably the most underrated games of the year, in my opinion. Neon White doesn't get enough love. It did not get as much love as I personally would want it to. So, yeah, that is why Neon White is number 4. Number 3, Final Fantasy VII Crisis
Core Reunion.
I don't know why you did that. But yeah, Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core Reunion. Of course, for those that don't know, huge fan of Crisis Core. Had me a PSP roughly around when it came out, and was a huge fan of Crisis Core. Also being a fan of Final Fantasy VII, and if you know and played the original Final Fantasy VII, you would get the reference in terms of a particular moment that refers to the character Zack Fair. Which basically delves on that, gives you this is essentially a prequel to the original Final Fantasy VII, and it's basically been remade for modern day. They definitely updated a lot of stuff, which was pretty dope. At least the PSP game was originally kind of like it was like a weird mix between turn-based and action, like so it was like you're technically controlling Zack, but it was like delayed. But at least now they totally scrapped that, and now it's like the combat is very similar to Final Fantasy VII Remake in terms of you basically literally control Zack. There's no delay. So that was a pretty dope welcome change, in my opinion. The enemy behavior is obviously they updated that to accommodate the adjustments to being able to control him directly. The graphics look pretty damn good, as somebody who played the original, for sure. They look very close. It seems like it's made with the at least an overlay of the I think Unreal Engine 4, which was used to develop FF7 remake. So it looks very much similar to that in terms of the characters and stuff, which it looks very good. And even the cutscenes, which they literally grabbed from the PSP and like upscaled it using like AI. It doesn't. I mean, it's noticeable, but it looks, it's pretty serviceable, I think. And yeah, the story is still there. Yeah, them story elements is there, and boy, that story still does hit. It really does. Man, that story hits still. So highly recommend if you are a fan of FF7, never played it. It's great. It's fantastic. It's fantastic. But I digress. That is why Final Fantasy VII Reunion is
Number 3.
I'm just gonna go with it because it's funny now.
Number 2, God of War Ragnarok.
God of War Ragnarok. What do I say that has not been said? This game is spectacular. I literally felt very compelled to do everything in the world. I did. I 100%ed it. Got the achievement and all that. And I like, weirdly enough, one of the best things I like about this game is that it doesn't ask you to waste your time. And what I mean by that is, of course, many games that force you to waste your time doing just miscellaneous busy quests and not anything that's substantial or is worthwhile doing. But a lot of there's a lot of elements to the story that basically breaks itself off into these quests that you do within the world. The world, of course, is wonderful. The combat is great. The relationship between Kratos and his son Atreus, awesome. Christopher Judge, shouts out to him, doing that 10-minute 10-minute speech at the Game Awards. But I mean, he did a pretty good job, man. He's Kratos now. And yeah, man, it was just overall wonderful experience. I thoroughly enjoyed Ragnarok. I think it lived up to a lot of expectations. I've kind of come to peace with my issue with Thor's hammer and stuff like that. If you've listened to, was the last episode or the episode before that, but I think after more time has passed, I definitely think Ragnarok, it deserves being
Number 2. Number 1,
you already know.
Elden Ring.
Yeah, Elden Ring. Man, what do I even say about Elden Ring? That it's been so long since I played it, but it's the impression that it's left upon me is still there. Elden Ring is basically what they set out to do. Basically, open world Dark Souls is probably the best way to describe it. But I mean, obviously, it's much more to it than that. But it literally delivered. Just playing that game was just a wonderful experience. Playing it on PC, didn't have any issues. Just all the graphical fidelity was just wonderful. Getting my ass whooped relentlessly was wonderful. I loved getting my ass whooped and just thinking, how can I perform better? I will say it definitely felt easier in a lot of ways because of the fact that you can explore and you do get a lot more flexibility. Let's say you getting your ass kicked at this one area, you could just leave, go to another area, and or go to some tombs nearby and get some experience and or essential rings and armor and stuff that would that at least helped dissipate the frustration a lot more than a traditional Dark Souls game where hey, if you stuck, you got no choice, you got to keep going at it until you get this. But at least with Elden Ring, I think you do get a lot more flexibility to do something else and come back to it, which I think works in its favor, especially in this open world format. I think it definitely did it a lot of favor. So yeah, Elden Ring was fun, man. It was a fun experience. Of course, obviously being in that zeitgeist at the time when it dropped, obviously everybody's most anticipated game, and I think it delivered. Obviously having an expectation of Souls games and, you know, what that entails. It was a wonderful experience. I mean, the world, the lore, you know, helped by who's the, not Tolkien, George R. Martin. Yeah. Yeah, man, I really dug it. So that is why Elden Ring is
number one.
It was a fun game. Put like damn near 160 hours, I think. Those some good 160 hours, let me tell you. So that, ladies and gentlemen, at least concludes top 10 games of 2022. So yeah, outside of that, well, yeah, damn. I was gonna talk about Crisis Core Reunion in more detail, but I think I'm gonna eliminate that because technically I talked enough about it. So yeah. Other than that, let's get into what I've been playing outside of those games. Callisto Protocol. One of the highly anticipated games, basically from the developers, or at least a lot of the developers that were involved with Dead Space, disbanded and made their own new studio, I think Striking Distance, and we got Callisto Protocol. So played it, beat it, and yeah, man, I was aware of some of the discourse when it came out. I didn't play it until a little bit after it did, and I'd have to agree with some of the issues. I definitely, even though I know a lot of people said that there were a lot of technical issues with the game, which I thankfully didn't get too many of, but I did have a couple of annoying ones. One where my game randomly just went to like a night / detective vision mode, and clearly was no explanation for it. So I literally was forced to restart the game. That was one I remember. I think there was one where it looked like nothing was happening within the game, so I think a certain moment was supposed to happen, but it just didn't load or script for whatever reason, so I had to restart the game. Those are really the only two big issues outside of that. But in terms of general gameplay loop, I was not a huge fan of the combat, to be honest with you. I think a big problem for me was at least having expectations of Dead Space going in. So I thought maybe like, oh shit, maybe, I guess I just assumed that you're just supposed to dismember enemies to kill them faster, like Dead Space, but it didn't seem like that was the case. So thankfully I did kind of catch on that a little bit. But it just seemed kind of ambiguous in terms of how to kill people. Like, even if you shot their head off, they would not necessarily die like quicker. It just seemed like, that's the thing that I'm realizing now. It just seemed like a lot of the enemies were bullet sponges rather than like intellectually stimulating enemies along with the combat. And then the combat was a little, it just got repetitive for me. At least the general like loop was melee the enemy multiple times until they get, there's a moment where you can use your gun in addition to the like ender of the combo in a way, which sometimes it was hit or miss, which I think that's the intention, but it was just, I don't know, it just didn't feel interesting enough for me. Yeah, it just wasn't fascinating enough for me. Yeah, there wasn't much enemy variety necessarily, I felt. You had occasional stealth elements, which were kind of annoying, but wasn't too much. It felt like, and then the enemy, you had this one consistent boss multiple times, and that was it. It wasn't like I would have liked more. I don't know, AAA bosses, if that makes sense. Which maybe that's kind of unrealistic action for like a first IP, but I mean, that's at least kind of the expectation I had going in, especially compared to Dead Space. So yeah, and then the story was and then after I beat it, I was like it just didn't do it for me personally. Maybe it was just I was too hyped, I don't know, but yeah, I just came away being fairly disappointed with the game after it after it came out, after I beat it. Just a lot of the twist and plot twists and stuff was just really, I guess, all right. So yeah, unfortunately Callisto Protocol was it just didn't do it for me. So at least I technically would put this as my top 10 games of 2022, or it was in the running, but no, after I played, I was like, no, this is, a lot of other games I prefer over that. So hopefully, I will say I would like to see a sequel. I think they could learn from at least a lot of the criticism I had, and of course other people, and make a much better fearful interesting game. That was also the other thing. The game didn't even feel like scary. It just felt more just gory, and just gory just for the gore, not necessarily the horror, I guess, if that makes sense. Like, it was more so a fascination of, oh man, how many times can I kill my main character in these certain ways and whatnot. That, I don't know. It depends. If the game is scary, then that can work, but in other cases it just feels gratuitous rather than like purposeful, or like gelling with the world, I guess. That's just, it just didn't come off that well for some reason. I don't know, but nonetheless, also played River City Girls 2. This came out last month technically, but I didn't get around to it until recently. And man, I have to say, definitely better than the first one. Really enjoyed a lot of the combat. Of course, they added the juggles, which I love me some juggles. Hey, that should be the pillar for fighting games nowadays, or beat 'em ups. So of course, playing the River City Girls, Misako, and what is her name? Damn it, let me look it up. Misako and Kyoko. Yeah, Misako and Kyoko. And of course, similar plot. Oh no, you defeated the one girl from the first one, and now she got to go to her dad and lick her wounds, and then her annoying adopted brother is rubbing in her face, and basically all story ensues, which hey, I love it. River City Girls, I dig it. River City, the Kunio-kun series was pretty, I'm a fan. So you also have Kunio and Ricky all both unlocked at the start of this one, which makes sense also because you can play this game in 4-player. And then there's some other characters you unlock through the course of the game, which they're kind of known, but just to be faithful to the series, not to spoil anything, leave that as is. But so you got that, and then one thing I really do like, and I feel like at certain times I'm like, is it just them like, hey, you all right? So basically, it's a crazy amount of Double Dragon references, which technically was in the first one, but at least within this one, it doesn't feel as like gratuitous, I guess. It didn't feel like banging you in the head with it. Like, hey, got Billy and Jimmy Lee, huh? Oh, we got you see Sonny, who's the not as popular Double Dragon brother the Lees. We know he exists. We know he exists. Oh, we got this enemy. A lot of these enemies from Double Dragon. One of the characters, Marion. She was from Double Dragon. Man, it's like, what if we made a Double Dragon, huh? That'd be kind of cool. We kind of would like to make a Double Dragon. Would you guys want a Double Dragon? It's not like we just put Double Dragon all up in this game with, it's expected maybe you guys may want to play Double Dragon. I don't know. We would want to make a Double Dragon if you wanted, but so it was definitely a lot of that, which I was very surprised by. Of course, as a Double Dragon fan, I'm like, oh, hell yeah, I would want that. Please, I want that. So, yeah, Double Dragon. Yeah, a lot of Double Dragon love. A lot of various characters in the Double Dragon series made their way into this. So, I was a big fan of that. As much as I'm joking about it, I was a huge fan of that. Like, please give us a Double Dragon. But yeah, in terms of just the general gameplay, the story plot, I really enjoyed it. Of course, River City. I like the progression. I like the character abilities and stuff that you have to buy, the money, currency. I think it was, they did everything they needed to for River City Girls 2. I really enjoyed it. I never got to play the multiplayer, unfortunately. It was weird. I guess I didn't like the fact that when you pause, you can't technically pause, which makes sense in a multiplayer environment. But just for me, just wanted to play it initially. I was like, I'm good. Maybe I'll play it back. But at least one of the blaring issues that I had with this game is the crashing. There was a lot of crashing I encountered in the game, and it was oddly during specific moments. And at least after some troubleshooting, I just realized, I think it was specifically when I play as Miriam, is when the game would crash for some weird reason. I don't understand it. At least for the Nintendo Switch, whenever I would play as Miriam, during certain segments in the game, I guess when like certain flame effects that maybe the game could not handle along with Miriam as a character or something like that, that the game would crash. And it was literally almost every time. It was certain segments, certain stages, or like specific locations where the game would crash. But it was literally the only thing I was able to deduce was that it was always when I'm playing as Miriam specifically is when the game would crash. I play as literally anybody else, the game would not crash. So I'm not sure why that is, but it was a little disappointing because, ironically enough, I really enjoyed playing as Miriam. But at least I played with her enough at that point, thankfully, where I was like, okay, I guess I could play as somebody else. But was annoying nonetheless. I literally that probably added like a good additional 2-3 hours, I'd say, based off of getting to a certain point and the game would crash and I have to go all the way back to that point because the game wasn't able to save before it or whatever. So yeah, that was a big bummer, but I think after they patch it, I think this game will be magnificent. Definitely would have put it in my top 10 for 2022, but at least I missed at least my personal cutoff. I'd say January 15th is my cutoff for any games that like were still in 2022. I was trying to catch up at the time, but definitely would put it in my top 10 for sure. Probably top 5 to be honest with you. But yeah. So there you have it. River City Girls 2. Wonderful game. I recommend. Also played a little bit of Dark Pictures, The Devil in Me. So this is I think the last game in the Dark Pictures anthology. The fifth and last game. So played a little bit, haven't played a lot. Actually was playing with a girlfriend and it was fun. I enjoyed it. I am enjoying it. I'm always a sucker for these type of games, The Walking Dead, the Telltale, pretty much Telltale games, any basically interactive movies, and if you boil it down to a lot of it. But I just like the fact that hey, somebody died. What could I have done differently? All right, let's play it again to see what we can do to save everybody. How can we kill everybody and stuff like that? So yeah, the plot with this is that you're like a movie crew, set to record, I think, a documentary of, this abandoned hotel or whatever. I think that has the reputation of being, haunted, I want to say. And then, of course, antics ensue. Where, oh no, we're trapped here all together, and what are we gonna do to survive? So there might be a killer around here still, type of thing. So that's the gist. I've been digging it. Yeah, I just like it. So far, but it's more Dark Pictures anthology. I don't know what to tell you. You know what you're getting basically when you play that. So yeah. Also, I've been playing Persona 3. They just dropped, I think, last week, or no, I think earlier this week. Earlier this week, I want to say. But nonetheless, Persona 3 and Persona 4 at least released on consoles other than PlayStation. Well, no, everywhere actually. Yeah, pretty much almost everywhere. Switch, Xbox, PS5. So I chose to play it on Game Pass since I was like, hey, why not? So yeah, and now I'm like almost 20 hours in. So really, really digging it actually. I guess the biggest thing I'm surprised by, having played and beat Persona 5 and totally loving that. I'm very surprised by how similar it is to Persona 5 in terms of the general formula. I thought it would be way more watered down than what it actually is as a Persona game. Probably the only thing I wish it was more, I wish it was the Persona 3 Fez version on a PlayStation, where basically you can actually walk and run around the environment. But at least with this Persona 3 portable version, you have to scroll your cursor around these pre-rendered maps throughout the game, where it's a little weird. It feels a little low effort, but it doesn't break the game that much. I'm just curious. I'm probably maybe gonna play the PS2 version out of curiosity, but I kind of wish they just did a hybrid of that, where they put in the elements of the PS2 version, which I think there are rumors about them actually doing a Persona 3 remake, which that might actually probably answer my issue with it. But then it's like, at that point, why not just not release this and then just release that technically? But I digress. Maybe just to give you more options, freedom. But then again, they do the full remake treatment. So I think for purists, maybe, they would like to have this versus the remake either way. But who knows? But nonetheless, I still enjoy it. I've been enjoying it. Pretty much a similar plot, what do you know, to Persona, in terms of, there's this, well, I guess not to really spoil it. I don't want to spoil it necessarily, but pretty similar story beats. Obviously, different enough to make it feel like its own. Of course, some pretty dope tracks, some dope music. Love me some Persona. So I definitely see myself playing for sure, because I hear a lot of the parties in terms of what's your favorite Persona, You know, like, oh, I love 3, 4 is my favorite, and all 5, at least so far. I don't know. It's hard to. I feel like it's very hard to top 5 for me personally. But then again, that's my first Persona. I'm not sure if maybe that's a thing where you tend to have an affliction with the first game in a series you play, maybe. But I don't know. I feel like that's not 100% true because I don't know. Playing 7, I feel like that's that that doesn't support my case either way. But nonetheless, but yeah, thoroughly enjoying Persona 3. Getting back to my RPG roots, and I love it. I love it a lot. I love it a lot. And that's going to conclude what I've been playing lately. Get in what I've been watching, which has been The Last of Us TV show. For those that may not know, The Last of Us, they finally got a show greenlit and airing on HBO Max. Watched the first 2 episodes. They come out every Sunday, and really been digging it. As a fan, of course, of the game, I think they've done a good job of, like some other games, the movies and TV that we won't mention, Resident Evil, that have done a very good job of being faithful to the source material, like a lot of games the movies should do. But I digress. So yeah, pretty much similar plot. Of course, Joel being a grizzled old man, meeting Ellie, and of course the antics ensue in terms of being a supportive father figure for Ellie, and all that slowly coming to be. But I think I really dig the faithfulness. It just feels like The Last of Us in movie form. There are some notable changes, none that aren't too spoilery. I like how they play with the infected being like a straight up fungal infection, and at least presumably, based on some of the lore and like nerdy stuff I've been looking at, like that literally the infection could have started due to some flour, and flour being infected, and eating it through baked goods, and people getting literally infected that way. So they definitely made some tweaks to like the origin story and like how it happened and stuff like that, but nothing too drastically just different from the source material. A lot of it just makes sense in terms of translating it to a TV format. So, yeah, a lot of just the unrealistic stuff, like, oh, we killed 50 people, and, oh, Ellie, I'm so sorry. Oh, man, I bruised, I just stabbed myself after killing 50 people. That's probably not the best example, but, well, no, they actually do kind of, like highlight that, I recall. So I can't even 100% say that, but basically some of the video game logic that obviously wouldn't translate to a movie, realistic format, if you will. Unfortunately, I haven't seen Joel make any shivs or anything to sneak up on some of these tickers, so there's that. It was realistic in terms of certain aspects where, shooting blindly at enemies and wondering why they aren't dying, but because you're not shooting for the head, Joel. But I digress. Overall, I'm thoroughly enjoying The Last of Us. It's a pretty fun experience, at least obviously being a huge fan of the games, and seeing what they do different, which is a pretty fun component. And even for people who've never watched the or played the game, seeing their angle from it, you know what I mean? So yeah, I hear it's doing ridiculously well. It's like it's had the most viewing day of, just behind Game of Thrones or House of the Dragon specifically, which I think has the highest record in terms of most viewership in a day or something like that. And I think it even increased like 20% more within the next episode, which also is very promising. And at least timing wise, I think, man, this was like a perfect time for them to drop it to, obviously after The Walking Dead has ended its season, people clamoring for a, zombie like horror, show. So I dig it for that as well. So, yeah, Last of Us. I'm happy for it. Happy for PlayStation Studios. Neil Druckmann, who of course was the director of the game. He seems to be very heavily involved with the showrunner of the show, who I guess worked on Chernobyl, which is apparently very good, which I've yet to watch. So, yeah, I love it. I love it. Love that. I love it. So, yeah, that will conclude. With that being said, we'll conclude, I think, episode 168 of Switch's Sights. If you did like this podcast, feel free to like, rate, subscribe on your favorite podcasting platforms. You can catch me stream this live on Twitch TV/ASwitch on Thursdays, ideally. Yeah, you can also catch the archives on youtube.com/ASwitch as well. And yeah, until next time, y'all, Happy New Year. Get your damn game on and feel free to fuck. Until next time, y'all. Oh, yeah.
Nobody's safe.